Junior Boy's Own.
And then the story begins. Because we know Junior Vasquez killed your records. We know how that story really blew up for you guys. But did Tony Humphries ever know about that, Terry? Did you ever tell him that? That you heard on his mix show? Here we go, everyone. Unearth another thing. The first record comes out of Junior Boy's Own. And of course, Tony Humphries' show. And the guy saying that, putting the beats in your bones.
There you go. I mean, we were, we were very, very, me, Pete and myself were very, very kind of influenced by New York. We, that was kind of, was the
Mecca.
Was the goal,
Well, thank God for that. I'm going to tell you guys, thank God you all were, because a lot of us would never have careers if you didn't champion what we were doing. Yeah. I always said that.
It was all about, I can remember sitting in with Pete, and we're making records, and I think it was on Ultra Nate, and when we did the Ultra Nate record, which become up Ultra Flavor, Pete recreating the Sound Factory siren, me being lazy, Pete sample a siren, and him going, no, I'm going to make one, and sort of spending about an hour and a half on this keyboard, kind of, manipulating some sound into a siren, which, always.
Was that mix after you came to New York together, or was that before you came to New York and went to Sound Factory and hung out and went and bought keyboards and stuff? I remember that time you were around New York.
Yeah, it would have been after we'd gone there, because it was directly, influenced by what we heard in the clubs there. So, we would go. I mean, I remember the first time I went to New York as an adult rather than a child. Actually went over with Danny Rampling. I think it was his 30th birthday, and a few of us went over. And we ended up going to the Sound Factory at the time when Junior Vasquez had a year off, I think, and Frankie Knuckles was the resident, and just the sound in the sound, listening to the sound in that room, and the sound in all the clubs, really, you were just like, that was like when you kind of realized, this is what I want, this is what I want my music to sound like. I want it to sound good in this room, on this system. It wasn't necessarily just about the DJ, it was about just the sound. So there was a sound system sound in New York. It was kind of like part of the heritage of the nightclubs particularly in New York. They were made, by Steve Dash and all these other sort of legendary figures of sort of audiophiles who had grown up connected to the clubs. And it was a very different philosophy to what was going on in Europe, because the sound systems were nothing like anything before, like the Ministry came along. They just didn't sound anything like that. They were usually harsh, and amps were being maxed out and everything was distorting. And then you went to a club like that and it was just like a whole different experience. So that's very influential on the music we made, because we wanted to make records that sounded good on those big systems. So that was kind of really what drove the kind of philosophy behind how we wanted our music to sound.
And sure enough, you did, because Frankie championed your music and Junior Vasquez championed a lot of your records, and a lot of us did. And we, you say about the New York sound comparing to the UK sound. I mean, Justin Berkman, when he helped create Ministry, he wanted to have the Paradise Garage feel and sound in England. He got it there. So you're lucky enough to have, and Ministry is still going now with the same sound system, but he wanted to recreate that because he was living in New York. Like Oakenfold too, he lived in New York for a while as well in the 80s. But I know you guys did, Fire Island became a name synonymous and with as an artist name under the Junior Boy's Own moniker. But of course, then Terry, now we get to your Lolita Holloway story, because that's a big part of the game too, that record. So tell us how you find Lolita. bring us up to how that was created, the track and everything that happened.
Terry was a man with, as he's already said, with many ideas, and he came up with an idea, great idea. Why don't we make a record? We'll do this record that was a bit of a club classic. From Andy Weatherall, who'd introduced us to it. It was this record called "Shout at the Top" by was it Star Council? I think it was Star. Yeah. And he said, "Well, we'll get Lolita Holloway to sing on it." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, sounds a good idea." And it actually did. It's one of these mad ideas that actually happened. So I mean, I don't know Terry. You probably can tell the story better than I can.
I think Steve Hall, who was the manager of Junior Boys Own, I've got a feeling he rang us at the studio on the Friday or maybe a Monday and said, "I've had a phone call. Lolita Holloway's in the country. Do you want to make a record with her? It's £2,000. We've got the money, but you'll need her to sing on something." And we said yes straight away. And then we were like, then panicked because, how do you write a great song? We've only wrote a few songs really. I mean, I know Pete writes the music and stuff, but lyrically, there's only a few things we had wrote. And, while they're okay, they're not what you would put in front of a disco goddess. They're not hit and run, and it's not Love Sensation.
Right.
So basically, yeah, let's do a track. And we wanted to do a track that wasn't a house record or it wasn't a disco record, but had a feeling to us. And about 5 years previously, there had been a Boys Own party that Simon Eccles had put on, one of our other partners, where Andy Weatherall had played Shout to the Top in the middle of the night, right in the middle of playing like pretty hard kind of techno records. And he played this record, and it's like a big kind of Tamla Motown disco record. And we said, we'll cover that. We'll cover that. There's a link to us, but also it's kind of as obscure as, no one else would ever do that. Funny enough, in the new issue of Faith, Paul Weller, we interviewed him, and because I'd never heard, and I don't think Pete had, whether he actually liked it or not. It was a kind of minor chart hit. It got to like 25 in the pop charts or something like that. So he got a few bob out of it. But he actually said in the interview that, he loved what we'd done, and it was probably how he would have liked his mix to have come out. So that was quite nice.
Yeah, we actually our studio at the time was down in was a very small space, smaller than this room actually, in a place called Wapping in sort of just east of the city of London, and we'd had a converted toilet, which was the sound booth, and that's where Lolita went in to do her vocals. So it wasn't the most glamorous gig for her, I must have to say, but it was it was good fun.
How posh!
I mean,
how posh that is, boy. Okay, Lolita, you'll be doing the vocals in the converted loo.
I don't think it didn't look like a loo at the time, but that's what it was. To be fair, it was probably sort of soundproof.
I remember she had just had surgery, and she showed us she had like heart surgery, and she was having a bit of a trouble. Do you remember sort of getting herself kind of? And she sent me out like to run to the off license to get a small bottle of scotch for her. But she kind of knocked straight back, and then sort of got herself going, and then suddenly bosh, we were there, and she and she was in the room, and it was quite amazing, really. And then we ended up going to Chicago. We had 5 days in Chicago.
Yeah, at the time, Boys Own had done a deal, or Steve Hall had done a deal for Boys Own with Virgin Records. I think they were called V2 at the time, and this is Richard Branson's sort of new label. And as part of the deal, they really wanted to sign Underworld. To be fair, they weren't that interested in Far Island, but as a nice little spin-off, they did sign up this record and invest a bit of money in promoting it and making a video to go along with it. So we got a trip to New York, to Chicago in the middle of the winter. I have to say, it was absolutely fucking freezing, and
yes,
but we did have a good fun, and we hung out with Lolita and Candy, who is her makeup artist, I believe. Candy J. Work this pussy, Candy. And
who remembers Candy J? Everybody put your hands up. You know, everybody's going, what? Candy J? Yes, Candy J. Work that pussy. Wait a minute. So she's doing makeup for Lolita Holloway.
I think she's doing makeup.
All right, hang on. Let me understand. So you guys get on the plane. You're all excited. You're going to Chicago now to go and cut a video together with her. Is that what the premise was from Virgin too?
Yeah, with a video crew, and we were just you know, we weren't doing a great deal. We weren't featured heavily in the video, to be fair. I think mostly we were just bowling around. There was one scene though where we shot in gramophone, and Jen and Terry had sort of put out a little request for all the DJs who were kind of like our sort of like, you know, we looked up to over the years to come down to the shop and poke their heads around the door while we were filming in there, and quite a few did actually show up, which was nice.
Did you actually experience what it felt like to be in Lolita's world, living, because her coming from Chicago and being on set with everybody? Did she take you guys around to where she wanted to record this video, or was it preset by you guys with the treatment?
The first day we was in, they had an English director who come over, who was a bit of a madman. There's a story about him in a strip club that I'm not going to say, but wait.
Don't say you're not going to say it and then mention it, but did something really bad happen?
No, only him getting ejected for some sort of. Anyway. But the first day we met. The first day they had two vans which had like kind of blacked out windows, and we were going to drive around with the Chicago crew looking for locations. So we said, look, can we go Gramophone Records first? So we went to Gramophone Records and we bought tapes, because they had, you know, tapes in the car, and we bought tapes of Ron Hardy at the Music Box, right? So we're driving into the South Side. We've got Ron Hardy on the tape, right? We've got Lolita Holloway sitting directly behind me and Pete with Candy J talking about Ron Hardy and motherfuckers, yeah. And I was just like, you know what? And I would say it now, never ever got better than that. Never got better. And it's just a bit of a shame that we were so busy at that time to not really appreciate how lucky we were and how great it was. You don't know that, you know, she died and you didn't know, but she was really nice. She was really nice. There was a couple of situations of racial stuff that she actually tried to avoid, and I didn't even realise this was happening, but without embarrassing us, you know, we was the English guy. He said, right, I'm going to take everyone for dinner, and her son was with us, and I think her cousin was there as well. He's in the video in a big kind of pimp hat. And we were going to go to this Greek restaurant, and she was like, no, we're going to just sit in the truck. No, what do you mean you're going to sit in the truck? No, you're coming in here. No, you know, we don't really like Greek food. Come on in there. And, you know, the waitresses and that, I mean, without throwing them out, it was pretty kind of, you know, really quite hostile, you know.
In the sense, wait, in the sense of that, the waitresses wouldn't serve them, or what?
Serve them, but it was just very cold. It was very cold, and she was, as I say, I think she knew this was going to happen, or she maybe, and she tried to, without sort of embarrassing us, I think, without saying, you know,
No, I don't want to do it. She's trying to keep it cool. I'm down low.
But we had a great time in Chicago. You know, we had a really good time.
Would you ever believe, and now we're into the 1990s, would you ever believe that was going to happen? Like to have that segregation moment for her? I mean, that must have been like, what are you talking about? Come on. Because in England, we all got together, all colors and races. We walked in a place, everybody was taken care of. I know, because I've ate many times. But I know these spots.
I think in London, you know, you do get I mean, there was racism everywhere, even in the UK. But I think in Chicago, it was a surprise because you expect it to be like a big, you know, it's a big interracial city. And you know, if we were in the deep south, you'd expect that. That was a surprise, really, is that we were actually in what we thought was quite an integrated city, and it turns out to be everything. It really wasn't particularly integrated, although there was a big black population, but it was quite separate at that time. I think things obviously massively improved, but that's just the impression we got at the time.
Oh, man, terrible. Man, you guys were lucky at least to get a chance to work with her like that. I got to work with her using her vocals, but I didn't get a chance to hang with her like that. Awesome.
Yeah, everyone was using her vocals, but yeah, it was good. It was a really nice experience.
So take us on the trip. So you guys start to become the flavor of the times. I remember Roach Motel comes out. You got like really hot records coming one after another. You're doing remixes, ultra flavor. What's the 90s like after that for you guys?
I mean, we traveled a lot, didn't we?
Yeah, a lot of touring. But before, it was really a particularly lucrative form of touring. We didn't get paid a lot, but we did play great clubs. We were lucky, you know. We flew around, you know, we did Australia tours, and I did some Asia tours and stuff like that. But yeah, this is before the era of the very well remunerated DJs. I've got to say, we didn't go home with a lot of money, and American tours as well. Obviously, we came to the States, but yeah, we were probably sort of the vanguard of that sort of DJs coming from Europe and playing other places in the world, and the world waking up to, you know, because we were that house music explosion that sort of started in Europe, you know, when I mean the explosion, the sort of acid house explosion in the late 80s, it was slowly spreading throughout the world, and we would get asked to do gigs in quite often by English people who had sort of become expats and were doing a bit of ducking and diving somewhere, and who thought they could put on a club, which quite often we found out when we got there was what they were. But we had a lot of touring and in not particularly salubrious experiences, but it was good fun.
Really. You guys are trailblazers in a sense, because you were setting the tone for the others to come after. You know,
we were sadly, we weren't like, you know, Sasha and Digweed were getting first class flights. You know, we were kind of premium economy if we're lucky. But we played some great clubs, especially in America. I mean, we played a really good party in Battery Park for John Davis, who was the promoter of Body and Soul. I remember that being a really good party. Some good ones in Montreal and Toronto, and some strange ones as well. Did we play Salt Lake City?
Yeah. Salt Lake City, San Francisco, obviously, LA. Got nearly murdered, I think.
We played.
Wait, hang on. I heard it. Wait. Hang on, Terry. Pause. I heard murder.
Yeah,
you have to eloquently. You just slide that out. Murdered. What happened?
It wasn't really. We were playing a club where we didn't really understand what deep house meant at the time. We thought it was different. You know, there was a lost in translation. We were playing a late night deep house club in LA, and we hadn't played enough vocals for someone, and he was explaining.
We were, I mean, to tell the truth, we were playing kind of, you know, our version of like, you know, what Junior and Danny Rampling was playing. And these big guys who were like, you know, the main dancers ended up running onto the stage, chasing Peter around going, fucking track shit, this is tracks, no tracks here, you know. And so the next day, it was very uncomfortable. The next night we played again in Santa Monica. We played, I think it was called Gotham, and we kind of had learnt our lesson by then. And we played, every record was a vocal, and the crowd laughed. We were forgiven.
Terry, you know, I'm going to tell you something that we remember. I mean, Pete was a part of this, but I'm not sure. I'm going to ask this to you. I remember reading about you guys writing about Junior Vasquez eloquently so much that you experienced his sets, and there was a mystique that started because of it. You had somehow, with you and a few others, were writing in magazines or something. We were reading this, and you were talking about these long sets, going to Sound Factory. You practically made him a UK icon before he even stepped into UK. What was going on these days?
It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't just us, though. I mean, you know, there was a lot of the house industry were under Junior's spell as well. You know, the people who run Back to Basics, the people who run Cream in Liverpool, they would always go. Express 2, you know, they made Music Express for the Sound Factory. You know, that's all they wanted when they made that record. You know, would he play it? So it wasn't just us. I mean, you know, and there was people like Tom Stefan, you know, and he was and still is a big Junior disciple.
Because, you know, we've always wondered about that, because, you know, people would ask me, oh, we read, I remember when I was going over, they said, we read this thing that Terry wrote about these long sets, and they went to New York, and it was like we were standing down listening and watching, and I'm saying, yes, Junior's playing a different type of sound. And what we were noticing was you were making these records, right, guys? And then Junior's sound was becoming your sound, in a sense, with his mixes. So you were doing what you thought he wanted to be played. And in the meantime, he's, in a lack of a better word, he's biting your sound. Because he also bit Pierre's sound too, with the Wild Pitch sound.
Yeah, well, Wild Pitch featured heavily at Sound Factory. I mean, it was, again, the two were almost kind of like synonymous, or they were connected. Wild Pitch was music for the Sound Factory. And so it was all part of the same thing. And that influenced us madly. I think people, you would go to a club like that and you would want to make a record for Junior, because Junior had a habit of, you'd walk in there with an acetate, give it to him, and, you know, 2 hours later it was playing on the system. He would give it a listen on the side and go, yeah, I'll give this a go. So you knew that if you went armed with the right material, you would get to hear it on exactly the club and the system it was designed for in the first place. So it kind of went a bit like that. So it was a music industry. I think all the clubs they were like kind of magnets. Everyone who was making music wanted to make. You'd go to the Sound Factory or the Sound Factory bar or somewhere like that, and you'd listen and you'd be inspired and you'd be like, right, I'm off to the studio to make records. I get these ideas when I'm on the floor. And you'd be off to the studio next week to make a record like the one you heard, or like a few of the other ones you heard that night. So it was just, you know, that was the thing about the scene in New York at the time, which was so rich, because you would go to clubs, you'd be inspired, you'd make music, you'd want to, and, you know, it was just so much going on. There was so much energy and life in the clubs. So it all fed together. It was a very healthy, sort of rich scene where there was a lot of creativity on the floor, in the booth, in the studios, in the record labels, and it was all connected, all coming together. So that was what made New York such a great place at the time.
So let me just say this as well. You know, Junior's the last of that king type of DJ where a club was built around a DJ. There hasn't been any since then, basically, in New York. I think he is pretty much the ending to that whole era. So what you were actually catching was what Paradise Garage was built on, the same type of setup, where a DJ played a long night and he created a story. And you all died to have Larry Levan play your record, because if you had him play your record, then there was a good chance the record would go to radio and then you had a hit. But you weren't thinking about having a hit. You were just thinking about, would this DJ rock my record in a weekend? Because between Friday and Saturday night, already 4,000 people heard this record.
Yeah.
And by Monday, every record label's calling you saying, I want the record now, because it's the hottest thing out. You know, you didn't have to do much, very little. Go in the studio, do what you loved, walk out of the studio, like you said, Pete, with the acetate, or in those days you make a tape, reel-to-reel tape, quarter-inch tape, and you give it to the guy and say, hey, what do you think? And if they trusted you, like Tony Humphrey's done it many times for me, I would give him a tape, boom, he was playing it that night. And I could see immediately the reaction of what you were doing.
We used to come to New York about twice a year, I think, and sometimes, I mean, one trip there, it was about 25 of us, wasn't there, Pete? You know, when Rocky came and Mark Wilkinson and me and Pete had made a record or a remix of something, and I remember I had an acetate that Steve Hall, I think, had given to me, and we went into the Sound Factory bar on the Friday where Frankie was playing, and I said to, oh, I've got a record for him, can I go in the booth? And this guy just kind of, it was at the side of the booth, he just kind of, really tall guy, just led right up in the air like that and put it over and just handed it over, and then about 10 minutes later it was playing it. You know,
smoke.
And yeah, I mean, that was, you know, that's but we had some great, you know, some really good times. You know, we used to come over and we'd go to Body and Soul when that first started. A few times when we were on tour, we would, like, I think we got stuck. Did we get stuck in Toronto in the snow or something? And we ended up in New York on the Sunday, and we went to Body and Soul in the afternoon dancing. It was great, you know. It was great.
And were those your heroes at that time? Frankie, your hero? You know, because I know how you are, Terry. I know how you are with DJs. I've experienced it. If you think someone, you love them. I know how you are.
I think Pete and myself, yeah, it would be Frankie, definitely. Because, you know, we got taken into the booth by Danny Teneglia to meet Junior.
Oh, Danny walked you in. Okay.
And it, you know, it was like, hi, how you doing? Yeah, nice. Out we go. And it was like, okay. Whereas the first time we met Frankie, you know, and well, the first time I remember meeting Frankie was me and Pete played with him and Dave Morales in Italy, a kind of big posh club, and they took us out for dinner, and we was, you know, fucking hell, you're going to go out for dinner, and he's going to be at the table, and I just kind of remember him just talking about our records, and it was just like, you know, how kind of humble, and like it was about us, not about him, you know. So yeah, you know, he's the one person, I think.
Now let me ask you something. If he played your record when he did, and this is my personal experience, it sounded different when he played it. I can't never explain this to anybody. I played my own records, I played your, but when Frankie played the record, you just had, it was like, I don't know if it was just because it was him or it was the sound system, but just everything about it. You knew he was playing it. The crowd went crazy. What an experience. I tell everybody, you don't understand. He's playing the record, sounds totally different. And I made the record. Is that how you felt? Because that's how I felt.
I didn't know. I had a specialty of missing him playing our record and my record. I had this. I remember going to Miami once and going around the clubs, and every club I went into used to, well, they just played your record. That used to happen a lot. But I do know that with him, he would always play wherever he played. He would usually play at the right time. You know, so he'd always so that's probably what was going on there. You would just find exactly the right time to play that record, which is probably why it sounded brilliant and why everyone reacted to it the way they did. You know, you wouldn't just put it on. We go, nah, I'll play this now. Or he'd play a records around it, leading up to it. He was just brilliant. I hate that word programming, but it's kind of like he chose the right records at the right time, and it always seemed to work. Always sort of flow with him, you know.
I agree. He just knew how to work a room. He knew how to read that crowd, and that's what makes a great DJ. You could be terrible at mixing, but if you know how to put the records together, that's what makes a great DJ. You know, and Tony Humphries to me was always one that, you know, he knew exactly when to play certain records, and it was like presto, magic.
There's a flow, you know, with those really great DJs. There's something about you kind of get sucked into it. You know, even if you didn't want to go out for a big night, you just go there just to have a drink, a couple of beers with a friend. You just get pulled onto the floor. You can't help it, you know, and they just keep you there. There's just this sort of flow of their music that just makes you want to keep dancing, and that's where the great DJs.
If I remember correctly, you were on the gig with Frankie and Kenny Carpenter, right, at the Ministry, guys? One of his last gigs. Was that his last gig?
Yeah, we were warming up that night.
Anything to add to what happened? Did you guys have dinner together?
No, we got there. It was a strange night. He wasn't his usual self, that's for sure. And he felt, you know, he just felt a bit withdrawn. He wasn't. Normally you'd go and there'd be people in the booth, and that night there was no one in the booth with him that night. His friend who he travels with, whose name I've forgotten, was making sure.
John Brown.
Yeah, John was making sure no one else came in the booth. So we didn't really get to see him or talk to him that much. But yeah, it was strange.
He was very, very kind of, you know, looking back on it, it was quite ominous actually, you know. You know, we to be honest with you, you know, we finished our set. And we sort of, you know, sat there for half an hour of Frankie's set, and then we left. You know, it didn't seem right, and you know, you kind of wish I had stayed. You know, it kind of like I think it was on the Monday we heard the news, and you kind of think, oh, you know, I should have stayed. That was, you know, but. You know, when we said hi and goodbye to him, he you know, he just didn't seem like the person that you had known for so long and, you know, met so many times. I actually, he played for us, for Boyzone, a few years earlier at XOYO.
Oh yeah, I remember that club. Yep.
And it was a few months after he had his operation, so he had his, you know, his foot amputated. And he was brilliant. He was brilliant. He was, you know, you talk about playing records. Now, at that time, I think this was about 2010, 2012. At that time, that kind of garagey kind of records, you know, it kind of wasn't exactly where I was, you know. I was kind of like kind of DC-10 Ibiza, and it was like I couldn't stop dancing, you know. And you know, he that night, you know, every person in that room, no matter what style of house you loved every record he played, you know. And it's that, like you said, that that kind of genius to be able to make records sound better because of when he played them. And, you know, he had that record out, I'll Take You There. That was an acetate. And he played it about 4 times he played for 4 hours, and he played it 4 times over the 4 hours. And by like the last time, that was the first time anyone had ever heard that record. Everyone in the club was singing it, you know. And yeah, you know, that's a kind. I guess that is his talent, but also all them years that he spent, you know, at the gallery, at this club, at that club, and that club.
Warehouse.
absorbing everything into, you know, into what he was. Yeah.
Did you guys realize that the American DJs were playing with, a lot of them played with the way we talk about stories with the words and everything? How one song would, you know, I find out with a lot of the American DJs, they would talk through the stories of the records, especially with, you know, those guys played the more disco records because those songs had those big stories. In house music, you didn't do that. House music is more of a body thing. It was more about, you know, making people excited. You know, it wasn't about sweetness. Disco had a tendency to give you cavities, some of the records, you know, in a sense. But it just amazed me when I heard them, the guys that played the disco stuff, how wonderfully they laid the house records out and how they were able to pick the best, including like if they picked one of your records, they always seem to pick one of the best records you guys made and how it all flows with the Americans, the English. It started to sound like one sound in a sense, like a painting, you know? All of them had that. But here's what the question that everybody doesn't like to hear. EDM begins, LimeWire, Napster, industry changes, vinyl goes down the tubes to, you know, real underground niche thing. What happens with you guys when all the changes begin?
Well, you know, look, basically, it was very hard to make a living, I think. You know, I remember you know, Junior Boy's Own, you know, a big record, you know, a big record, you know, could sell 15 to 25,000 records. And I think it kind of, you know, went down to, you know, a few thousands. And then suddenly you can't, you know, you can't pay people's wages. And also, you know, for us, I think for us, you know, EDM had already happened 10 years earlier with trance. In Europe, trance had took all the money. You know, it was like the big thing where all the crowd was going. So EDM was the shock in America, but not so much in Europe because, you know, house music had kind of already been sidelined, I think, by trance in Europe and in other places as well.
But you still had a good business though, even with house music. It wasn't like you were completely out of it, you know? Trance was viewed, yes, no doubt. And people were making huge amounts of money, especially a lot of the English guys were coming over touring from the west to the east. And I remember Paul Okafold told me, as soon as he finished from the east, he started from the east to the west again. It's like, wow, he never went back to England. He stood America, killing it.
Yeah.
So I can understand that. But, you know, here we are selling house records and we were all making a good living. So what happens? You know, now you can drink from the well for free, in a sense. All this music is there for you to come and take now. What you used to have to buy, it's no longer. So how do you adjust? What did you guys do?
I got a job.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, basically. Well, I mean, it was kind of the perfect storm for me. There were many things. You know, I was doing my own. I was kind of like gone off. I was working separately from Terry for a while because Big Love came along and there was a big hit, and then I had a record studio, record label, and there just wasn't any way to fund any of it. The records just weren't selling. There was nothing. It just wasn't. There wasn't any money there. So and then I had a kids and family, bought a house, so I had to think about, you know, how am I going to supplement my income? So I started doing a normal job in digital. In fact, I thought, well, fuck this. I'm not gonna just be beaten by it. I'm gonna work out how to work with it. So I'm working, as well as doing the music thing, I work in the digital world.
In what capacity?
I build websites with teams. So,
oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I do digital stuff online. That's my other life.
The life that found you after the music.
exactly.
And children, of course, that changes everything. You become a father, and responsibilities change. And
Yeah, and then there was also a decision to be made. So basically, music changed. Where the thing that really changed was that the ability to make a living from recorded music almost vanished within about 5 years. I mean, it's not impossible. You still can actually, but certainly for a period around sort of 2000 to 2005, everything, and then kind of the 2007 when the financial crash came. It was such a massive shift. It took everyone. So there was just a kind of whole realignment of the recording industry, especially in dance music. Nearly all the independent labels sort of closed down, or most of them did, and there just wasn't anything there. But it's slowly they've kind of figured out how to do it in a way to survive. And you've got labels like Defected, who we also work with now, who are doing well, but they've had to completely change their business model to adapt to the new situation. But yeah, around that time, if you really want to do well, you can make some living out of recorded music, but you need to be touring a lot. And at the time, I had two small children, and I didn't want to be away every weekend. I wanted to be around my kids, so I had to make a decision about doing something else.
were you prepared to do like the Dutch guys, change the sound completely, or you just said, enough of this? I'm just gonna,
Well, I had sort of shifted my sound a bit. I mean, I probably mine, I'd like to think that both Terry and I are influenced by a big sound, and that's actually one of the things that we most enjoyed about probably going to New York and listening to DJs like Vasquez and going to Ibiza, is that you wouldn't just hear one style of music, you'd hear lots of different sounds, and people like, that's the advantage of the resident who plays for a long time, and like Danny Tenaglia, another great example. He would mix the style of records. He'd play tough and tribal at the peak time, but he would play deep soulful classics as well. So there's room for all of that stuff, but I think it became quite hard for a period as well around that sort of early 2000s, when suddenly everything just became taken over by that sort of minimal electro sound, and it was very little space for anything else for a few years.
Exactly. That's
Would you
exactly
agree?
what happened.
But,
Terry, what did you decide to do, Terry? Did you decide to fight it? Or
I did decide to fight it actually, and we started Faith fanzine actually, and we started doing parties for a couple of hundred people, because around 1999, trance and progressive house had taken over everything, and there was a few clubs playing, what we would call deep house, and the sort of stuff that we loved. But there was only a few. There was a really good Italian night called Vertigo.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I forgot about Vertigo. Yes.
Yeah. There were Secret Sundays had just started. Ben Watt had a Sunday night called Lazy Dog. And Stuart Patterson and Leo Elstob had a party in West London. So we kind of joined up. We joined up troops for the magazine, and also to do the Faith parties. And they become really big, so I managed to kind of make a living out of, promoting and DJing with Faith. And at that time, we were kind of very lucky to be able to get really good DJs cheaply. We paid Dixon £500 from my memory to play at the Key. We were getting American DJs, good DJs, people like Dennis Ferreira, really early.
The new crop of guys that were coming out, a lot of the new guys.
Yeah, the new lot, and we could get them, really early. DJ Sneak, Honey Dijon played for us. I don't know if it was her first English gig. I'm not sure, but she played for us really early, about 2003, and she was fantastic. And so that really took off quite well. You know, we got a good run with the magazine. So that kept my profile up. So, you know, I was getting work in that, on the back of that. But, you know, it wasn't the same as when, you know, it wasn't the same as, you know, when me and Pete were working together, you know, and making records, you know, I still kind of, you know, do bits and pieces, but, you know, I'm never going to be involved in a record as good as Shout It to the Top or you know, records like that, you know, Wild Love, you know, it was the right time and the right place. You know, we had a beautiful desk. I think, who did it belong to, Pete?
Which one? The one in
The one in Wapping.
Oh, it's a Harrison, wasn't it? Yeah, it was an old.
For those, the mixing console guys, when they say desk, not an office desk.
Yeah,
Harrison mixing console.
Yeah, I think it was a Series 10, was it? One of the ones that Michael Jackson had used on.
Oh, the Bruce Sudian console.
Yeah, exactly. The one on he'd used for.
But didn't it belong to someone? Wasn't the story that it belonged to Imagination or?
Oh yeah, I think.
Oh, was Lee John's board?
This was the kind of the story that.
Not his board, but his producer, Jolly, what's his name? But,
where they produced all them like great records, you know, that Larry Levan then went and remixed.
Yep, that's the one.
So, you know, it was great, and we could get people to come in and play instruments. You know, we used to get the guy from the Style Council. He used to come in and play Rhodes, set a real Rhodes up. You know, oh, we want backing singers. Oh, we get new colours. You know, and it was just like, you know, it was just incredible, really. You know, to have that, you know. To have that kind of happening, really, you know, to do that now, I don't think you couldn't afford to make a record and pay for like free backing singers to come in. You know, you wouldn't sell enough records to even break even on it.
It's true.
So do you think the music is more of a catalyst now than like a business card than actually?
Absolutely. That's a shame, and that's the shame, isn't it?
It really is a shame.
That's the shame.
But does that mean, do we stop making music because that happened? Or do we make music because we love what we do and work through this?
Well, I think.
Do you still believe in it? Let's ask that. Let me really simplify it. Do you still believe in it?
You know, I mean, I'm not going to speak for Pete, but you know, this is. You know, this is. I still make my living out of this, and it's still my passion, my hobby. You know, this is. You know, which I spend most of my time on. You know, listening to records and buying records for imaginary nights that I'm not going to play at. But I'm still buying music. You know, and you know, and DJing is like, you know, it's for me, it's
in the DNA. It's in your DNA now.
It's what I do, you know, and as much as you know, as much as a night makes you happy, it can make you really angry as well. You know, because what you want, once you've been to the Sound Factory, once you've heard Frankie, then, you know, when it's on its arse and when it's bad, it's, you know, you just think, what am I doing? You know, what am I doing here? And then all of a sudden you'll play somewhere and the crowd will be great, and you'll play these records that you was like, I was waiting for the right moment for this record, and it works, and you just go, yeah, this is why I do it. You know, this is what it is.
Are you going to keep doing it to the end, or are you going to eventually stop? And that's to you, Terry. So I got to ask that to you.
To me?
Yeah. Are you going to keep going to the end of your life, playing till you can't play no more? Or are you going to get to the point and go, I had enough. I'm not doing this anymore?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, when's the end of my life, you know? I don't know.
Well, physically speaking, in a sense that, you know, you go, this is getting rough to get up and keep doing this, you know, jumping on a plane. I'm not talking about playing in the area. I'm talking about going and being an international DJ. Are you going to keep doing this?
You know what? If I have the option, I'd be more picky. I wouldn't. You know, I don't want to stop, but I would like to be able to choose. You know, not to go somewhere. You know, as opposed to most DJs just have to go. You know, we don't have a choice. You know, it's your living. You know, I'd like to be in a position where I could say, you know, no, thank you. I've been there before, and it was very nice, but not for me. But you know, I'd like to go just to the places that kind of excite me and give me a little bit of kind of, you know,
something to look forward to.
Well, now the question's gonna go to Pete. All of a sudden, Pete, we knew you were kind of out, like the mafia. We'll say it like this: you were out. But if you're part of this gang, you're always in. And all of a sudden, Big Love blows up again. And we're hearing Pete Heller's playing. The first question that came to my mind is, where the hell has he been? We knew you were, you know, we knew you were a husband and everything. Are you going to now step back in while we're in lockdown to really push to start making this music and get yourself prepared to come back strong when we come back out? Or are you going to stay with the main job and just play this as a hobby, in a sense?
Well, it's a hobby until it becomes sustainable to be not a hobby, right? Because if it's, you know, the bills got to be paid. So if I could earn a living exclusively from music, that'd be a wonderful thing. Yeah, I love that. But you need a setup. I mean, the problem is I don't actually have a recording studio anymore, so I've got a lot of stuff in storage. So there is a plan, and there has been a plan for a while, to you know, dust off the gear and sell off the bits I don't need to rebuild a studio at home. But yeah, that's just taking a bit longer than I want.
Is Farley and Heller coming back together?
Yeah, we're always definitely up for making records together. I mean, it's fun. I mean, the thing about Terry and I is that when we work together, it's always fun because we've got a lot that we just laugh a lot about stuff.
That's true.
And we talk about football, and we've got a lot of funny memories, and so you know, it's always better when you're working with someone you like being around. So, and Terry's a good ideas guy, and he's a, you know, he knows what he likes the sound of. So when you're doing music with him, it makes things much easier. I had a lot of time in the studio working on my own. It was difficult. It's not easy working, trying to be creative in your own the whole time. So when I work with Terry, it's definitely a more enjoyable experience.
Well, you know, go ahead.
I'm ready. Whenever you just give me a shout.
Well, I know, hanging out with Terry, that if there's a sporting game on, and this I know personally, no matter where we are, if there's a football game on and his team is playing, everything stops. Come on, Lenny, come with us and we'll go to the pub. We got to watch the game first, and then we can talk after.
And both times we lost. And both times to Arsenal as well. I know.
Yes.
I think what you were saying, like with Pete and myself, right? Kind of, we're different people. But I think we come from different places and we're different people. And I think it kind of works. You know, we have a good laugh. We used to gang up on our engineer, Gary, because he was from Liverpool. So we would spend half the day doing kind of really bad, kind of offensive sort of Scouse accents to him. And then we would be like debating, you know, football, Tottenham, Chelsea, all day long. And it was, you know, it's good, you know, it was good fun. It's good fun. I did get a bit miserable when it got to about 3 a.m, and I would kind of, you know, sort of go to Pete. Oh, it's like, you know, because I used to like get into the bit, because we had this big desk, we would do the mix live. You know, the automation would be set up, and you would go, ready, go, and you'd go, and you know, and we'd be kind of like bouncing off the things, But to get to that moment, you know, there was always that little kind of couple of hours where Pete was doing the final bits of programming and looking for that perfect hi-hat. And I'd be like kind of sitting in a chair, kind of, you know.
We're nearly there.
We're nearly there, right? Nearly there could be 5 hours later. 5 hours later, right?
That was the thing. We're nearly there. But the thing was as well, I mean, we were in Wapping and I live in Tedderton. So I was like an hour and a half's drive home. So, you know, it was kind of like you'd finish at 4 in the morning and you'd been there all day from 10 to 4. And then I would drive home.
So the people understand that's like doing 2 days of work in one.
Yeah. But, you know, Pete would always do me a tape and I'd have the tape in the car. And I had a Cherokee Jeep at that time, which was a really nice car to drive. And I'd be driving through London, there'd be no traffic, you'd be playing the record that you've just made. And it'd be like, wow, you know, wow, this is, yeah, fantastic.
So you guys were the CNC Music Factory of the UK.
Without the songwriting talent, yeah.
Wait a minute, but hang on. As far as I remember, Terry, you always told us that you had this black woman diva trapped inside of you.
No, a long time ago, a very long time ago, someone asked the question, and this was at a time where you could say whatever you wanted. You can't really say this stuff now. And I said I was a gay black man trapped in a white gas fitter's body, which kind of like, you know, if you say these things now, people go, oh, that's a bit like, oh, can you say that?
Yeah,
you know?
but everything's listened to very carefully these days.
Yeah.
Everybody's dissecting.
That was the quote that I made very flippantly. I tend to be far too flippant for my own good.
Yeah, but it's okay because we understood what that meant. That means you had soul beyond soul for music.
I hope so.
Well, you do. You know, you've been around enough music to know better. But you know what? We still have more work to do. We're not there yet. You know, we're not finished yet. We still got more work. So now we're in pandemic. What's going on in the UK? Tell us what's the dream after the pandemic? What are you guys thinking about? I mean, everybody's talking these days. What are we going to do? Where are we at? Pete, are we stuck in the lab? Pete, what are we doing? We're hiding? What are we doing? We're waiting? First of all, let me ask the question properly. Let me ask it properly. Is the government handling everything correctly?
No.
It's a shambles. It's a total shambles. I mean, it's probably worse where you are, but it's not much better here.
Oh Christ, we just got through the revolution on last Wednesday.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And now we're talking about impeachment today. Oh God.
It's going on right now. But no, I think that things will. I mean, there's two ways of thinking. I mean, the problem is that reality is that this virus isn't going to suddenly just vanish. It's going to be here for a while. So although people will be vaccinated and there'll be some immunity, but I just think actually it'll be a bit of a slow opening up of stuff rather than suddenly everyone charging back into the clubs. There's one, you know, the other option is suddenly everything gets, you know, just everyone goes completely mental because they haven't done anything for about a year and a half and they just want to enjoy themselves. I'll be going. I can't wait to get to a club and have a proper dance. But yeah, I don't know how many clubs will be open or what's going to happen with them. Terry, you're much more connected than I am to that kind of scene.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's the after the Spanish flu came the Roaring Twenties. And that was direct as a direct response to the to the horror of the Spanish flu. I can see that happening definitely, and I think there will be a lot of venues who just go, but that will also mean that there's a lot of empty spaces, and I think that I think there'd be that will mean new opportunities for maybe younger promoters or people wanting to buy a building and build a club, you know, if they've got some money, you know, that wasn't there before. But of course, it's like, you know, would you invest your money knowing that, you know, this could come back again in 3 years' time or something? I don't know.
Are we
I mean,
talking that 3 years time with this virus or another virus coming in?
another virus, and I you know, I don't know. I mean, I here in England, we are looking at kind of the spring for a soft opening, but you know, how long before, you know, the Ministry of Sound can open? I've got no idea. I've got no idea. No idea. I mean, you know, maybe we can have outdoor clubs. You know, there's quite a few spaces in London where people can do outdoor stuff. You know, hopefully that will happen in the summer. You know, but I don't know. If it was my money, you know, would I invest in doing a big event for this summer? I don't think I would.
You know what? I keep seeing all these dates getting pushed back from 2020, now 2021. So we're going to even see if some of these things could even take off again. Yeah. Maybe just 2021, maybe another year wrapped up again. Actually, when I said Happy New Year, I said, put me in a cocoon and wake me up in 2022. It's already, I feel like the year's over already. I'm sorry, everyone, but that's how I feel. It's like I have no hope yet. Now, in the summertime, we may have many people vaccinated and we may get control of this virus. But until that becomes a reality, everything is in ether at this point. We don't know. We don't know. Would you like to add any additional things that I missed on? Was there anything that I forgot? Because I try to remember everything in these. Is there anything that I've missed before I let you all go?
No, I think that was pretty good. I mean, you know, we just, you know, from the vaccine thing, I would just say that, you know, I am hopeful. You know, and once they get the, you know, the vulnerable and the elderly, I think it might just be a chance of, like, you know, the rest of us. I mean, you know. And I'm not counting myself as the elderly and the vulnerable here. We might just have to take our chances.
Right, and play the herd immunity card.
We might have to. That might just have to be the way.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, we'll see. I guess, you know, I think we just have to stay positive. There's a lot of people much worse off than us, that's for sure. And yeah, you know, we'll get through it.
We shall, and we will overcome. You know that, guys. Because I need to get back out there and playing again. I'm missing it. I never realized how much I missed it until it was told to me, you can't do it now.
Yeah.
It's terrible what we're living through.
Yeah.
But we will get through this, and we will learn something from it. I don't know yet what we're going to learn, but we will get through this, and we will learn something.
Don't eat bats.
Don't eat raw bats.
I think what we will learn is not to take it for granted. You know, on that night when you're sitting indoors and someone rang you up and said, "Hey Lenny, you know, do you want to come out? We're going to go here." You know, David Morales.
Yeah, right. I'm coming now. I'm going.
You're going. You know, now you were like, "Oh, you know, I'm watching Netflix and I'm not coming."
Yeah. That was a question. That's a question. Remember Terry and Pete, they said, you guys are going to be able to do this from your home. You won't even have to travel no more. Right? This is way years and years back. I remember hearing this. How is that experiment working for you now with this, you know, watching all these live videos and streaming? Do you really believe that everyone's going to want to do this forever? Or are we going to want to get back to socializing again?
Yeah, it's not, you know, it's about community. It's about community. It's not about the DJ. It's not about the music. It's not about, you know, drugs. It's about community. It's about all them people that, you know, you meet every time you go to that club. It's about the people who have met their wives. They've had children because they met at this thing. And that's the thing. It's community. We need to get our community back. And you can't do that online. You can't do that on Zoom.
Well, you can, in a sort of funny way. In a real,
I mean, it's a different community. It's a new
let me
community.
compress that. So these two met through Zoom, dating on Zoom for weeks and weeks and weeks. And what did they do? They wound up going to Tulum, Mexico, where they were allowed to cohabitate and actually have to meet. And they fell in love and got married, but they dated the same way like we're talking for a while. It's a different way, but if it's the only way right now forward, and we have to play music, teach everyone, whatever it takes to keep this alive, we're going to keep doing what we do. And I want to say to Terry, he's doing a fantastic. In fact, this is the magazine, everybody. This is the last one before the blue one. This the winter edition. This was last fall.
Yeah.
And this is what he was talking about. You know, another question, was the Ashley Beetle record to you guys, if I remember correctly, the one that blew up for him? Was that on Junior Boy's Own?
What one?
The one with the Tramps sample in it.
And the lights went out.
Yeah. He did.
Oh.
He did before then. He did. See, this was the thing as well. Me and Pete were making records. You know, doing our house thing, and you know, people kind of, you know, people were playing them in the UK, but it wasn't until I think there was, you know, there was a moment. There was a moment that kind of, I think, broke us, which was when Tony Humphries played. He started a residency at the Ministry, and we had just done a record, a remix, DSK, and he played that several times that night. And all the kind of London DJs and all the people screaming about, you know, and after that, it kind of seemed that that give us kind of our boost in England. And the same as with Ashley, you know, Ashley made that record, New Jersey Deep, and it was Louis Vega who broke it in New York.
Right, the New Jersey Deep record. That was the big one. Yep, with the swing beat, with the jazz swing track feel to it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and then it was then we had like Junior breaking Express 2, and Frankie playing our records. So we kind of got bigger in England from America. You know, it was the American DJs playing our stuff that then made the English DJs all go, wow, you know, yeah, you know. So we kind of, it was kind of a cultural kind of transfer.
Would you say it was a backdoor credibility thing? That, you know, you guys are making this stuff in England, but the Americans are playing it, and then it's coming through back into England, but with a stamp of approval on it, because these guys are.
It was just a bit of inverted snobbery, really. I mean, it's always been a bit of an aspect to that in the UK dancing. I mean, there was a sort of habit of early in the days, you would try and pretend you were an American artist. You know, if you could disguise your label to look like an American label, or build up a backstory that you were some strange American, people would take you seriously usually, because people wouldn't take you.
Joey Negro for a start. Yeah. Also, a lot of people doing smaller labels used to have their records shrink wrapped, so people would think that they'd come from America. Luckily, we didn't. We never sort of did that. And I mean, you know, Boy's Own was quite a quintessential London kind of thing before it even broke. Although Fire Island, you know, me and Pete never been to Fire Island, and I just love that. You know, the original record was by the Village People, so that's kind of where my idea come from. That.
Don't go in the bushes.
Yes. And Roach Motel was when I think me and Pete, we had gone to New York, and there was it was a winter music conference in New York, you know, the industry thing. And I got a feeling we were all in someone's room about 4 a.m. and sort of sleep, and an advert come on telly for a Roach Motel.
Yeah, and it was check in, but they don't check out.
Yeah. Hey, Roach Motel, they check in, but they can't check out. And I'm like, oh, that's a great name.
It's actually what was it? It wasn't Winter Conference. It was called
Decon, if I remember, Decon or something like that.
no, it was the I can't remember the name of the bloody thing, but I remember the first one we went to. There was a remember that?
Oh, New Music Seminar.
The New Music Seminar.
Yes, in New York. Yes.
Yeah, I remember that the first time we went, we had our biggest fan. The first time we arrived at some place and some bloke ran up to us in the Junior Boys own T-shirt with a Junior Boys own. He had all the merchandise, didn't he? Remember?
We went to yeah, I remember we went to, that's the first time we went to Sound Factory. I went anyway. Me, you, Gloria, and Dave Durrell. Remember that? And we've been to Alphabet City first.
Steve was there as well.
And oh God, yeah.
Let's not go into the details.
I'm afraid to ask.
Yeah, no, don't ask. Don't ask.
I'm going to ask what happened.
Nothing.
Well, give us a clean rated observation from the bird was overlooking, looking down. What was happening?
What can I say?
Yeah.
Nothing too bad, but you know.
Well, first of all, let me explain to everybody what Alphabet City was like in those days. It was very seedy, a little rough, the Lower East Side. Sound Factory was on 27th Street in that time. This was before Twilo.
There's illicit substances involved, so you know we don't want to.
So they were having a good time. So you were in town having a good time.
Exactly, we had a good time.
Did
you guys have anything happen in the Lower East Side?
No, I mean basically what happened was that we were taken to Alphabet City to meet someone. And it was about 7 in the evening, and it was very light. And I remember they had the stoops like you see in the films, and there was a lot of people playing Latin music, you know, like on a boombox. And we went in to meet this person, and about 3 hours later, we come out, and it was pitch black, completely dark, and we couldn't get a cab for love nor money. And I remember being a little bit
worried, I presume.
A little bit worried. Yeah, a little bit. But we went. That was, you know, when we went to the Sound Factory that night, and I think we went to see Frankie, but he wasn't playing, and I think Junior was playing, and I'd never heard of Junior then. But he was playing pretty much the death mix stuff. He was playing, you know, stuff like Black Sheep, and you know, all those kind of records. Dream Lover.
Right. When the crowd was more of an ethnic crowd in the room. Because at that time, Sound Factory was very garage-esque. A lot of the people that went to garage and the younger ones that didn't make garage were going to Sound Factory. And you had a very gay crowd as well. And the music was very beautiful and bright, you know, and those big vocals like Mariah Carey, Dream Lover with the David Morales piano. That was the sound of that time, of that era.
Yeah, it was very good.
Pre to him getting dark and the drugs changing in Sound Factory and getting harder and the music getting tougher. That was that whole era. But there was that time when he came from baseline, because that's where he comes from, baseline. And then he had his crowd, and then Paradise Garage was closed, and all that came to Sound Factory. So you caught, like I said, you caught that, what garage would have been like. It wasn't exactly, but it was a piece of it, the after effect. You know? Damn, guys, you were lucky. You caught it at the right time. And you also caught New York before it was gentrified. Now, thanks to Giuliani, at the late 90s when he was mayor and, of course, he was attorney general, he went after all the mob guys and all the club owners. And he destroyed the club scene. He ripped it all apart, you know. And that's the story of today. We got beautiful luxury buildings to go and live in, but no place to party. Now, right now, we have no place to party, period. But pre to the pandemic, clubs were segregated to what they call the red light area on the west side, where back in the day, clubs were all over Manhattan, all over the city. You can go anywhere. but he wanted to make it like kind of like a red light district. So that was part of it. And a lot of people's, oh God, a lot of the industry that I remember went into other industries because there was no clubs to work at anymore. And that was another big change. But thank God we were all traveling. You know, at least we were able to get on a plane and go play anywhere else in the world. We just weren't worried about playing in New York because there wasn't a lot of places to play.
Sure.
You know, but I want to thank you guys. Amazing story. You filled in the blanks, and I wish you, you know, stay safe, stay healthy, keep making that music, and I'll see you soon, Terry, hopefully on the other side when I come across the ocean again. Whenever.
Maybe in Tenerife. Maybe in Tenerife. I spoke to JJ actually today.
He's all right. He's all right, right? JJ's a good guy.
Yeah.
He's probably watching the show.
So maybe that'd be good. Well, look, thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for doing it. I had to get Pete. Pete was a tough guy to get my hands on. We got him. Terry was like, right away, no problem. We just got to get Pete. And Pete, thank you. You look like you're working in a submarine with the record collection in a very red room. We love that look. Very red.
It's the lampshade, actually.
It's great. It looks like
not as red as it looks on camera. Actually.
We're looking like, well, we're thinking you're working in the submarine, yellow submarine. You all need is a red submarine. And Terry Farley. Congrats, guys. You are still legends in my book. And I know when you make new music, I'll be playing it. I can't wait to get it. And everyone pick up Faith Magazine. Thank you again to tuning in to True House Stories. Gentlemen, good night, and good night around the world. And thank you again. And you know we're coming with more. Thanks again, everyone. Take care. Peace, love, unity, happiness, and house music.